Okay, it's 4 o'clock. Let's get started. I'm Tom Savory. I'll be serving as chair this afternoon in the absence of our chair, Mr. Wynn, and we all hope for a very full and speedy recovery so that he will join us again as soon as possible. The Design Development Review Commission is made up of volunteers with experience or interest in historic preservation and design. We generally meet on the second Thursday of the month to review cases. Staff to the commission are our urban design and historic preservation staff. They are available to answer questions if you have them, but please do not interrupt proceedings if you do indeed need to speak with one of them. The meeting generally proceeds with the staff calling the case and describing it. I will call for the applicant to come forward afterward to add to the basic description of the request if necessary, or if the applicant wishes to do so. If so, the applicant should keep the presentation to 10 minutes or less. The commissioners will then have the opportunity to ask questions. At this point, I will ask if there is anyone in the audience who wishes to speak for or against the proposal. Audience comments should be kept to 2 minutes per person. If there is, the applicant will have an opportunity to respond, which should be, rebuttal should not exceed 5 minutes. So 10, 2, and 5. In most cases, we'll make a decision tonight after all information has been presented. If your case is denied, or if you feel that our decision was made in error, you and anyone withstanding have the opportunity to appeal it within 30 days of the decision. So if you plan to speak about a specific project, you must have signed in. The sheet is at the back of the room, and if you wish to speak during the course of these proceedings, please stand now and raise your right hand. Just one. That's it. Do you affirm to tell the truth in these proceedings? Okay. Will staff call the roll, please?
Mr. Bachnight? Here. Mr. Broom?
Here.
Mr. Daniel? Here. Ms. Fuller-Wilt?
Here.
Ms. Great?
Here.
Mr. Savory?
Here.
We have quorum.
Great. Does the agenda order still stand?
We've had one change since publication. An item on the consent agenda, 2400 Marion Street, will be deferred until next month.
Okay. The DDRC utilizes a consent agenda for those projects which require DDRC review but which meet the guidelines and typically require no discussion. If anyone wishes to discuss an item on the consent agenda, I will ask that you speak up after the consent agenda is read, and we can pull the item for discussion onto the regular agenda. Will staff please read the consent agenda?
Our first item is 723 Laurel Street, which is a request for design approval for exterior changes and for preliminary certification of the Bailey Bill in the Governor's Mansion Protection Area. 1209 Lincoln Street, a request for design approval for exterior changes in the West Gervais Street Historic Commercial District, and 2918 Clark Street, a request for design approval for exterior changes and preliminary certification for the Bailey Bill in Earlwood Protection Area A.
Is there anyone who wishes to take an item off the consent agenda for discussion? Could I have a motion to approve, please?
Move approval of the items on the consent agreement to include any staff comments that will be incorporated therein.
Second?
Second.
Have a vote? Do we vote?
Mr. Bachnight?
Yes.
Mr. Daniel? Yes. Ms. Fuller-Wilt?
Yes.
Mr. Broom?
Yes.
Ms. Great?
Yes.
Mr. Savory?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Will staff please introduce the first case on the agenda?
I neglected to include that we had the December minutes as part of our consent agenda.
Right.
If y'all would make a motion either to approve or disapprove those.
I will make a motion to approve the December 14, 2017 minutes of the DDRC meeting. I'll second that.
Thank you. Mr. Bachnight?
Yes.
Mr. Daniel? Yes. Ms. Fuller-Wilt?
Yes.
Ms. Great?
Yes.
Mr. Broom?
Yes.
Mr. Savory?
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, the first case is 144 Saluda Avenue. This is a request for a certificate of design approval for exterior changes in the Wales Garden Architectural Conservation District. This two-story brick veneer house was built in 1950 and has its original 6/6 wood windows. The period of significance for the Wales Garden District goes through the early 1950s. Since this house was built in 1950, fits the overall character of the neighborhood and retains most of its original features, it is considered contributing to the district. The current proposal is for wholesale replacement of 38 windows with aluminum-clad wood windows with exterior muntins in a 6/6 design to replicate the design of the original windows. The applicant sent in an image of this window and that was not included in your packets. I've given you a copy if you would like to review that. The 38 windows include windows on all sides of the house. Only those windows that are visible from the public right-of-way are within the purview of DDRC and staff. Windows visible from the public right-of-way include windows on the front and sides of the house, totaling 24 windows. Of these 24 windows, 2 windows on the south side are behind the chimney, and one on the north is on the garage, is only minimally visible. There's also one non-original window on a side porch enclosure. Replacement of non-original features can be handled at staff level, and windows on the back of the house that are not visible may be replaced as desired since they are not within the purview. I've highlighted here the windows that are of greatest concern today. These are on the side and the garage. These are original windows here. Other windows are minimally visible. Section 7 of the guidelines states, when technically and economically feasible, repair of deteriorated or damaged windows shall be preferred over replacement. The windows appear to be in good condition with only minor areas of deterioration or rot that could be repaired. The only issue that was noted by staff is that the windows do not open. However, since the windows are painted or either pinned shut, it is likely that all the windows could be made operable again. At the suggestion of staff, the applicant had one window on the house repaired to be made functional again as a test case for the process of repair. However, the applicant was not able to provide staff with any information related to the extent of the repair necessary or the cost of this repair. So therefore, staff has not been able to assess this process fully and how successful that process was. However, as staff noted, the windows appear to be in very good condition. Repair is technically feasible. Therefore, staff finds that the wholesale replacement of windows is not in keeping with the guidelines. So for staff recommendations, staff finds that the request for wholesale replacement is not in keeping with Section 7 of the guidelines and recommends denial. Do you have any questions for staff?
Would the applicant wish to speak? And you've sworn in, and would you please state your name?
Yes, my name is Conley Ann Ragley. I am the property owner along with my husband, J. William Ragley, at 144 Saluda Avenue, Columbia, South Carolina, 29205. First of all, thank you for the time today to discuss this issue with you. And I also want to thank staff. They've actually been very good to work with. I fundamentally disagree with their assessment and their decision. But I'm thankful that you guys are here today to hear our case. My husband and I purchased this home on August 11th of 2017. It was previously owned by the Rubin family, and they had we purchased it from the estate, and Miss Rubin had been in a nursing home for several years, and when we purchased the house, we bought it as is. We have done extensive renovation to the house, specifically electrical concerns. We've rewired the entire house. We've put new plumbing pipes. We're about $80,000 in just on, I would call them systems, nothing fun like a new kitchen or a new bathroom. So we have made a significant investment in this home. My husband and I, like I said, purchased the house on August 11th of 2017. I'd like to enter into the record from our closing documents the paperwork that we were required to submit with the Department of Labor Licensing and Regulation, requiring that to learn about covenants or other land restrictions. Our number one complaint with this is we did not know that this house was in any sort of protection area. It was not listed on the listing. Our agent didn't bring it up. The selling agent didn't bring it up. The family didn't bring it up. And frankly, it didn't come up in the closing. So I will go ahead and enter that into the record for staff. I don't know if they will distribute that, where it specifically asks in that section that if there was any sort of covenant or restriction on the property. I'm not from Columbia originally, so there was no way that I knew that this was in any sort of district, any kind of protection zone, architecture, nothing. There was no disclosure. We had no idea that it was in this. Frankly, I don't know if I would have purchased this house had I had known, because we came from Shandon. And maybe I'm a little bit naive because I'm a little bit younger, but I thought everything on that side of Hardin Street was Shandon. Boy, was I wrong. There are lots of little fiefdoms inside the area, and it's not just Shandon. There's Hollywood Rose Hill, there's Wells Garden, there's lots of different neighborhoods. So we had no knowledge that this was in any kind of area. And frankly, I think contractors, and I shared this story with Ms. Walling when she came to visit our house, I think contractors sometimes get a bad rap because it was our contractor that brought this to our attention. Because we met with him and said, hey, we want to replace these windows. And he said, oh no, you know you can't do that, right? And so that launched a whole slew of investigations on our end, finding the information. I reached out to Ms. Walling because I believe in doing things the right way and not sneak around and try to replace one window in the cover of a moonlight. And so that began our initial conversation into replacing the windows. I'm also going to submit some pictures to you. Ms. Walling did visit on the one occasion. We just fundamentally disagree that they're in good condition. Ms. Rubin, unfortunately, was in a nursing home, as I mentioned, for the last several years of her life. Her family that was here in town, frankly, did not keep up with the house and did minimal improvements. And we've had to make some significant investments to try to bring the house back up to standard. I'm going to enter in some pictures for the record. We have identified at least 4 windows that leak. I'm sure with the next big rainstorm, I'll find some more. So I've got some photos here. Those are specific on leaks. I've got one that's got black mold. This one is in the garage showing rot and deterioration. And I put this in our application specifically. I'm asking for 38 windows for the following reason. I think it is a detriment to property values to have one kind of window on the back of the home and have another kind of window on the front of the home. I think that's a very dangerous proposition for property owners because I would definitely question if I went to go purchase a house and there was one kind of window on the front and one kind of window on the back. So that's why I've asked for 38 windows. I understand that the windows on the rear of the property that are not in the public right-of-way, in the public view, that I am able to replace those without approval from the DDRC or from staff, but I feel like it's important that all of the windows in the house are the same. We would be doing a disservice to the house to put one kind of window on the front and one kind of window on the back. And also, we did have one window repaired at the recommendation of Ms. Walling. Frankly, it was almost twice the cost of the replacement window that our contractor had priced out to us. It took the carpenter 4 hours to try to get the window open. We don't know the specific cause of why the windows won't open. Is it a structural issue? Are they painted shut? There are pins, as she noted in the photograph, that are on the window. We have no keys for those. He literally had to take a crowbar and almost break the window seal to get it open. So that's why we're asking for these windows replacements. My husband and I really don't want to move ever again. We want to make this our forever home here in Columbia. And, we have already invested a substantial amount of money in this home. We want to bring it back to the character that it has for the neighborhood. And that's why I'm here today. And like I said, we just fundamentally disagree with the staff decision. And as I noted in my application, we are not asking for vinyl windows. I know that that is a big discussion where folks want to put vinyl windows into a home. I do not want vinyl windows on this house. I want 6/6 aluminum-clad wood windows. I want them to look identical to the windows that are in there, but I want them to function properly. I have a 20-month-old. We will be having a baby in April. It is not a basketball under my dress, I promise. This is very important to me, that these windows are operable, functional, safe. Very, very important to me. And lastly, I've told you some reasons why. I've showed you some evidence, some information. I'd also like to bring to your attention 100 Saluda Avenue, which is about 4 doors down from us, that was allowed to replace their windows with aluminum-clad wood windows. The house was built in 1953. I've been in contact several times with the property owner. She is doing a complete renovation of this home, and I would ask that the same standards to this house be applied to ours. I will take any of your follow-up questions that you may have, and I just thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Before we move to questions or comments from the commission, is there anybody here that wants to speak in favor or against the application? And I think that my understanding is when new materials are presented, that we need to give the opportunity or allow the DDRC to review it and comment on the new information, or to decide to defer the case.
That's correct. If new information is presented that staff has not been able to review in light of the guidelines, there may be a case for deferral.
And then if we deferred the case, would we move to a motion to do that? Is that how we do it? Okay.
If you'd like, I'll bring this last, just so everything's together.
Yes, sir.
Sure. For the seller's agent was Michelle Moore, and our buyer's agent was Susan Zais. Zais, Z-A-I-S.
I'm a commercial real estate broker, and I'm familiar, because I do some commercial residential stuff. I'm familiar with the representation form, and when it's no representation, that basically means they're not saying anything yes or no. So it really doesn't have any value other than the fact that they just don't know one way or the other. So it's not like somebody says you're going to buy it.
Sure. And I just wanted to present that for the record. That's the only piece of paper that even mentions anything about covenants, and there's nothing attached to the deed, so. I think there are Jen Will, is Jake, yep, that's them.
Is this the window you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
And who makes it?
It's Jen Will, is Jen.
Jedwell?
Anybody else? Well, let me throw something out there, because we have been presented with new information today, and I think that to me, and I'll defer to the rest of the commission to discuss this and make a decision, but to me it seems as though there may be information that's been presented that staff hasn't had an opportunity yet to review. I think that there is, without knowing reading the minds of the rest of the commission, I think that there is a pretty, whether or not you knew that you were moving into an historic neighborhood, is really, unfortunately, even though we sympathize, not relevant to the way that we need to make a decision as a body. And I think that there is, from the information that we were given prior to the information that you just passed around to us, compelling reason to, in my mind, to go with staff's recommendation, just based on the guidelines themselves. The problem that we have is that if we make an exception to the guidelines without significant reason, that sets a precedent that moves forward into next projects and makes the guidelines more not as strong as they should be. But since, or a compromise is the value of the guidelines, but since there's new information, I am inclined to ask if somebody on the commission would like to make a motion to defer until staff has had a reasonable opportunity to review this new material and then bring this back next month.
If I may, just to respond to that, I mean, Miss Walling went on I took her in every room of the home. So she has seen these, I mean, she may not have taken a picture of it, but we went on a full tour of the house.
Okay, I understand. Let me ask of any other commissioners' point of view on this.
Sure. I'll offer up mine, Mr. Vice Chair. The recent information regarding, I guess, the pictures that show the windows, looks like they're leaking or they're being water damage that's being caused from under the windows. That's new information that we haven't had a chance to evaluate or determine what that water damage is, and if it's something that is significant enough to where the repairs aren't feasible per the guidelines. So that would cause me concern and want to defer to get some additional information in that regard. I know that they've seen the windows, but I don't think staff was made aware that there could be some water damage.
We had a specific conversation about one of those windows in the picture when we were on the home tour, because we specifically had a conversation about one of the windows.
Yes, she did point out windows that were leaking. I think was one of the windows that was leaking the one that your contractor repaired? Oh, okay.
And frankly, can you define that word, because that is, the word wholesale did not come up in my application, so. can
Replacing
you-
all of the windows.
Okay. Okay.
that have had this issue. One on Haywood, staff's recommendation, the commission approved the fact that the window was out of key. This was a house that was not a contributing house to the neighborhood because of its age and design, and the window that was planned to be installed was not in keeping with the design of that particular house. The second one that did not go to the DDRC is 100 Saluda, and that was approved because it's a little bit older house than yours, but not much, and then there's yours.
By 3 years.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's kind of an arbitrary.
Right. So I like to look into things like this, and the Sanborn map shows, as of the 1950s, that there was a house at 104 Saluda. Now, what's
Is that this? Is this?
yeah, and what's puzzling to me is that if you look at a deed in February of 1953, there's a 108 deed from Curry to Curry, and then there's a 53 deed from 100 Saluda from Curry to Curry, same family but different portions. So the house in 104 appears to have gone away, which is surprising because this whole neighborhood was platting in the 1915. So I'm a little puzzled by the Sanborn map, which shows a house at 104 when the two houses that are there now are 100 and 104. So I mean and then your house shows up on Sanborn, and that deed was Reuben to Reuben in 1949. I haven't gone beyond that to see, but just roughly your house is roughly 1949, 1950, and the Curry houses are in the middle, 53. I talked to a law school classmate of mine who grew up on Inouye, and he's familiar with the Curry houses and said 104 was built before 100. So for historical data, I don't know what that means other than the fact I view these three houses are all basically in the same general time frame. They just hit the historical designation of being over 60 years. So be that as it may.
So you're saying that 100, 100, 104, and 144?
100, 104 are the same lot that showed as 104 on the Sanborn map that shows a structure there.
Gotcha.
And I'm puzzled why the structure was destroyed less than 30 years after it was built. But the three are basically yours, 100 and 104 are very close to the same time
But yet 100 was able by staff approval?
frame.
Okay.
That's where I'm.
Yeah, and if I could clarify that, 100 Saluda Avenue suffered some alterations over time to the house.
Yeah, we looked at it when it was on the market. It was something.
Right.
Yeah,
right,
it was the
so
same
it's-
situation. It was an elderly member of the family. The house had been basically,
It's considered non-contributing since it's been heavily altered over
Okay,
time.
I
So just
think
wanted
that's
to be
the-
clear about that.
That's the salient point to the conversation. Now we're back to where I understand why we're there. Okay. Well, I mean, I will say that I think I sympathize with your point of view and with your situation. I think it's difficult to deny that the guidelines state what they state. I'm an architect who has done a lot of historic preservation work with windows that are in far, far, far greater states of deterioration, so I know it can be done. The question of whether or not you want to do it really has to defer to what the guidelines say, and unfortunately, whether you knew it was an historic neighborhood or not is really immaterial to what we're bound to consider just strictly within the guidelines. It's just very narrow. But that said, I don't know whether or not the rest of the commissioners think that it would be appropriate to, given the new information that we've gotten, to defer this so that staff can review that and see if there might possibly be a different point of view after that information is reviewed, or whether we want to, somebody wants to make a motion and take a vote, assuming there are no further comments or questions for the applicant.
and I guess the further review would get into status of the other windows that you want to replace as far as condition. I know in my 1924 house on Watery Avenue, we put on storm windows, which I don't normally like, and we put interior storm windows in our sun porch, which work beautifully.
Well, unfortunately, adding a storm window, and that's something that we had a discussion with staff when she visited the property. Storm windows are not going to help the windows open. So, you know, and I have a love-hate relationship with storm windows. I know a lot of newer communities ban them, so, you know, that's not an option that we're willing to go with right now because that doesn't solve our problem of the window not opening. That might be a discussion for later on if the window can become functional.
Again, I think our purview is pretty narrow. I mean, we have guidelines. We have to determine whether or not we're following the guidelines. That's as narrow as our purview is.
Let me follow up that. Are you familiar with the Wales Garden Neighborhood Association?
We have just found out about this because of this discussion,
But because they have a very extensive website.
which I found out
which
after we purchased the
Which
house.
describes in detail, just like the Shandon neighborhood does, of what you can and you can't do in your neighborhood.
Right. Well, again, when I purchased the house, I was not aware that there was something, the Wales Garden neighborhood. I thought it was all Shandon.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's lots of little fiefdoms over there. It's, you know, it's a learning curve.
Do we have any more questions or comments, questions for the applicant? Would somebody like to make a motion? If not,
I'd like to make a motion for deferral.
second? I'll second it.
No discussion? Mr. Bachnight? Mr. Broom?
I would say yes.
Mr. Daniel?
No,
Ms. Fuller-Wilt? You're voting for a deferral.
Yes.
Ms. Great? Mr. Savory?
Yes.
The motion passes.
we'll see you next month.
Next case.
This is 1317 Shirley Street. It's a request for certificate of design approval for an addition in the Melrose Heights Oak Lawn Architectural Conservation District. This is a circa 1930s brick veneer one-story house with a recessed arched entry and cross gable roof. The current request is for a one-story, 870 square foot addition at the rear of the house that includes approximately 400 square feet of enclosed space for a master bath and closet, with the remainder of the square footage as a back porch. Because of the proposed location and current configuration of the house, the most visible portion of the addition will be on the left side of the house, where the master bath extends back approximately 26 feet. This portion of the addition will be inset 6 to 8 inches from the back corner of the house, and that's this side shown here. Generally, staff has found the proposed addition to be in keeping with the guidelines in scale, size, location, and most details. The only area staff has found not in keeping with the guidelines is rhythm of openings. As proposed, there are 2 windows on the left elevation, one at the rear corner and one at the front corner of the addition. This leaves an area of approximately 16 feet of blank wall between the 2 windows. While the view of the addition will be slightly obscured by the presence of a fence, the large blank stretch will still be evident from the right-of-way, since the fence can only be a maximum of 6 feet tall. Staff recommends adding a 3rd window in this space. The window does not need to be the same size as the other windows, since the existing side elevation shows a range in size of the windows, and staff finds that to be appropriate and in keeping with the architecture of the house. As seen in the top image, since the evaluation has gone out, the applicant has suggested a transom window in this space. However, staff has found this type and size window not compatible with the architecture of the house and does not suggest this approach. And staff's understanding of what the transom would look like is in the bottom image there. So for staff recommendations, staff finds that the proposed addition at 1317 Shirley Street to be generally in keeping with Section 6 and 5 of the guidelines, and recommends granting a certificate of design approval with the following conditions: that a 3rd window will be added to the left elevation, or that the proposed windows be adjusted to create a regular rhythm of openings. All windows on the left elevation be wood or aluminum clad wood with exterior muntins, and all other details defer to staff. Do you have any questions for staff?
Yeah, I'm assuming that the exterior is not to be painted.
The exterior of the addition is a hardy plank, which has been considered compatible with brick houses. The house itself is already a painted brick veneer.
I couldn't tell from the picture.
It is, yes.
Any other questions for staff? The applicant like to speak? State your name, please. I saw you swear in, so.
My name is Walker Daves. I'm with Indigo Builders, and I'm representing the homeowner, Mr. Chad Elsey. Rachel and I have been communicating a little bit on the staff level. I'd like to request the committee consider the transom-style window over a full operable window, simply for the fact from the interior layout we have, and they should be in the plans that you have in front of you. The interior layout, that window would fall directly over a new double vanity. So it would be a little bit awkward and sort of be a little disruptive in terms of mirrors and lighting and things of that nature. Whereas the taller transom window might allow us to keep things the same as the plan, essentially, without having to be too disruptive in terms of the overall design of the cabinetry.
Thank you. Before we go to the commission, is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against the application? Commissioners have any questions or comments for the applicant?
Mr. Daves, good to see you again. Any possibility of the window on the left being enlarged so that it's not such a vast open?
The window currently on the far left. Is that me? The window currently on the far left is for a water closet, which is roughly 3 feet from the inside and inside clearance. So that it could be a little bit larger, but we're sort of dictated by the size of the water closet itself on the interior.
Yeah, it's pretty tight.
It's a little tight, yes, sir.
The window on the existing, on the same elevation in the middle, that's a bathroom too?
I'm sorry, which one are you referring to?
That window? Whoops. It was there.
If you look at the very top of the picture on the far right, there's a window in the middle. Is that a bathroom?
Yes, sir, that is an existing bathroom.
Okay, I realize you're saying the new window is very tight quarters where the water closet is. Is there any way possible to make that window the same as the existing window?
So the new water closet, you want to make it similar size to the existing bathroom window?
Right.
I think that would probably be doable, yes, sir. I'd have to get some measurements on the existing window just to verify that, but I think the way it's drawn, it's similar size in terms of scale.
To make sure I understand, Bob, you're talking about this window?
Yes.
Okay, correct.
And to make sure we understand, you're talking about the small window at the back corner.
The far left.
enlarging
Far
it
left.
Right.
To be the same size as the full-size
Right.
window on the addition.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I had a question about the staff recommendation, because the applicant has made a suggestion about a window that staff doesn't feel is appropriate. However, the staff recommendation is to grant a certificate of design approval with the condition that a third window will be added to the left elevation. So, to create a regular rhythm. So I guess my question is, if we were to approve the application with these conditions, whether the staff and the applicant feel you could come to an agreement about what that window would be.
If you make the condition that a window be put there,
Yeah. Because both of these show a window there.
right, yeah, you're right, my conditions didn't specify a size. So I guess I was looking for the commission to make a suggestion.
Say which one it should be?
Yes,
Okay.
or if there should be a window, yeah.
Okay, I'm confused again. So Mr. Dave says he thinks he can make the window on the left of this addition the same window or similar to the window that's in the middle of the existing.
Correct, yes, sir.
And so now what we're talking about is the window over the vanity, whether it should be there or what size it should be. And his concern is if you put it there, then you mess up the configuration of the mirrors. So the alternative is, do we put a smaller window there, do nothing? And I guess, Mr. Daves, what's your say there?
Well,
Am I hearing it? Am I hearing this right? Okay.
yes, sir. I mean, my personal preference, and I'm looking at it, if it were my home, it would be nice not to have a window there at all, just so you have a full wall for a full mirror and sconce lights, things of that nature. But if we do require a window based on the committee's findings, I'd prefer to have sort of a smaller transom style window that's a little bit higher where the header heights line up with the adjacent windows. So you do sort of get that similar rhythm of openings, but, I guess
How high are the ceilings in the addition or this?
they're not 9 feet.
What height are the window head heights typically?
They'd probably be about 16 inches down, I would imagine, so, from the ceiling, so.
Did I hear some potential comments down at this end of the table?
Well, I want to make myself clear to understand what you got here. The bottom picture shows so-called hopper window over the vanity. Is that what we're recommending? Has to be one or the other?
It's not what staff recommends.
Oh,
That's what the applicant would like to propose as a compromise between staff's recommendation And the
Okay, well, I'd be
original design.
concerned about the owner would like to have a mirror across his vanity. I'm sure that window might be interference.
Well, the full-size operable window, I feel like would be sort of an interruption of the mirror and the vanity, but if we were able to do one with this a little bit higher,
With a 9-foot ceiling, you have plenty of room.
I'm sorry?
With a 9-foot ceiling, you'll have plenty of room.
Yes, sir.
Normally a mirror of what, 5, 6 on the floor?
Okay, well, it seems as if we have, the question is what type of motion we want to make. I haven't heard anybody on the commission make the case for the full-size center window. If somebody does want to make that case, I think the case should be made now.
I'd like to make that case.
Okay.
What is the width of the window over the water closet?
It's 2 feet by 4 feet.
Could you put that size window in between the vanities?
Yes, ma'am, we could.
I like that solution.
So it sounds like maybe where we are is you could increase the size of the window at the water closet, and you could also place a narrow window, vertical narrow window, like the one that's currently in the water closet, in between the vanities. Would anybody like to make that motion? Ms. Fuller-Wilt?
I'll try. I would like to make a motion that we grant a certificate of design approval with the following conditions. A third window will be added to the left elevation, or the proposed window will be adjusted to create a regular rhythm of openings, that all windows on the left elevation will be wood or aluminum clad with exterior muntins, that all details will be deferred to staff. And do I need to state the address or the?
You could state the section of the guidelines.
Thank you. In accordance with, in keeping with section 6 and 5 of the guidelines.
Any discussion?
I'm not sure we clarified the transom window over the sink.
Well, I think that if I may, the motion is to increase the size of the window at the water closet to match the width of the existing center window, and to introduce a new window between the vanities that is the width of the current water closet window. So it's not a transom, it's a vertical window.
To match the current house, it would pretty much look the same.
That's the motion, and the applicant has said that that's acceptable.
Just to clarify, I would prefer the higher transom window, but if that's a compromise, we can work with it. So.
Okay, I think we're about to put a ribbon on this, so.
I'll second the motion.
All right. Mr. Bachnight? Yes. Mr. Broom?
Yes.
Mr. Daniel?
Yes.
Ms. Fuller-Wilt?
Yes.
Ms. Grate? Mr. Savory?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next case, please.
Or actually,
That's it? Oh, that's it, okay. Now, I'd like to see another case. Okay.
I'm sure we can do more if you'd like to. But
Any other business?
I would like everyone to keep in mind that normally in January, we have elections for our chair and our vice chair. We're going to delay those.
Excuse me.
We're going to delay those elections until next month and see if we have everyone back again. If not, I'll be sending out something to you all, just sort of summarizing where we're at and how we're going to proceed with elections in February.
Very good.
Please keep Mr. Nguyen in your thoughts.
Absolutely. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
In favor?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.